Hi. In this video, I want to talk about validation and deprivation, feelings of victimization, how often in many cases when you're in a vulnerable position or in a position where you feel like you're being deprived, either psychologically or physically, that's usually the time that in many cases, feeding your ego, you need validation. You validate yourself more. You need to find ways of validating yourself more. Many circumstances, sort of like if you're feeling down about life, you want to find someone else to validate your beliefs. Or if you're having a severe lack in ego or a severe deprivation in your big ego, you want to validate it by hearing someone else say it to make it yourself seem like you're more right, or whatever it may be, to make yourself validate your own beliefs, to make it seem like you're more on the right side, that you're more correct, that you're more useful. So, yes, validation is often a human, and not just a human, but a animalistic trait that many people have. People are looking for people to reinforce what they already believe. Not only that, but they want to hear something that makes them feel better. So they hear something and then they use that to reinforce their own beliefs that they already had a conviction in. And they use that to strengthen those bonds with those beliefs that they've had. And they use that to, almost in a way, it's used mostly as a distraction from the deprivation or whatever pain or thing that you may be feeling. You often look for the opinion of someone that's similar to yours when you feel like that person's sharing a similar deprivation to you. And that's in many cases how the function works. You feel bad, someone else feels bad, or at least they're mentioning the idea that someone's feeling a certain way, the way you feel, looking for some kind of relatability with someone else. And that's when often, in many ways, how you find a sort of short-term, at least, solution to the problem you may be having and dealing with some kind of deprivation. In many ways, that's what it usually comes from, is validation, and typically speaking, comes from deprivation. And that's the main point. That's the basic point I wanted to cover in this. It's a very easy point. I think we can all recognize, be a little aware of our own psychology and how we function, that we're often looking for opinions that reinforce our own, because we're often, not that misery likes company, but misery likes someone around there to make it feel better. Misery wants something there to make sure that it's not alone. It wants to hear a similar story from someone else, at least in a certain way. Some people may want to feel unique in their suffering. They might want to indulge in their suffering and make themselves feel like they're the only one that deserves such a claim to such a adversity or a hardship, to prove how inspiring they can be. And I think that works. And I think maybe many of us have that in us. We want to have a story to tell, and we want to have glory. And we want to have a way to make it seem like it's more grandiose than it actually is. And I think that's, I guess, a good inspiration mechanism, and if anything, a useful mechanism to at least motivate you to do something useful. But yeah, we're often looking for a similar opinion from someone else, at least an opinion of understanding, at least of logically breaking it down, maybe not necessarily sharing the same experience, but a familiar experience, and logically discussing it and making sure you can relate the experience regardless of how similar the experience may be. So that's often, in many ways, what people may be looking for when they're talking about validation. And validation is usually based off of something missing. You feel like the world's against you, you're a victim, or you're not getting what you want, or you feel like you're missing something, or you're in pain. You want to feel like you're not alone in that pain by hearing someone at least understand your pain. But it goes back to the idea, you don't need someone to understand your pain for the pain to exist. And someone understanding your pain isn't going to take the pain away. Only fixing the pain and what's causing the pain is going to take the pain away. So in many ways, it's a feel-good experience and maybe a short-term solution when it's not going to fix the problem. Unless the problem may be a psychological one, then maybe that can fix you and help you, at least in a short-term way, maybe not directly attacking the problem, but it's a way of fixing the problem in many ways, And unless that was the problem you were having to begin with, it was people not recognizing your or validating you, or whatever it may be. If that was the main issue to begin with, it's usually not going to be the long-term solution to the problem. It's not saying that it can't be a solution, because everything can be a solution. Someone recognizing your pain can take away your backache at least a little bit. It's not taking the backache away, but it's making you feel a little more comfortable in your skin during an experience of deprivation or pain or suffering. So in many ways it can work in positive ways, but generally speaking, unless that was the issue itself, um, a lack of people recognizing you and empathizing and actually recognizing their pain isn't going to be fixing the problem, unless that was the issue, like I said before, mentioned beforehand. That was the pain to begin with. A lack in psychology, a lack in fulfillment in psychology and ego, and that's how in many ways it works, and that's often a short-term solution or distraction in many ways. A short-term solution is usually a distraction in many ways. That's most solutions are short-term solutions when it comes to the fact that they're mostly just distractions. Short-term solutions are generally just distractions until you find something else something else deprives you, and you find some other distraction or different distraction or the same one at a different time. It's just a short-term distraction to get you through the day. And that's how it works, unfortunately. Yeah. No. But yeah, many ways we want to hear someone at least validate ourselves, understand, not to be taken in vain, but to at least understand your plight of experience that you're experiencing, because that can be useful. In many ways. At least to trudge along in the game that we're playing. We're playing the game. And often, obviously, we can't have our feelings physically without our ego, and obviously, it's a useful thing, thing to acquire is validation, to at least help you march on through existence. So anyway, I think that's enough on validation. I don't think there's much more to mention on validation, except it can be used in other ways. You want to prove you're right when it's a deprivation. Obviously, when you say everything's a deprivation, and that's what we're basing all our desires and satisfactions and our movement on, obviously it doesn't make much of a difference, because you're just pretty much saying everything's a deprivation and everything is just a validation. But in many ways, if you're a happy person, you're not going to be validating yourself because you're lacking sex when you've had sex so many times or whatever it may be, while a person that's, say, celibate and feels like, someone that feels like they're being victimized by the opposite sex or whatever it may be, using this as a good example, yeah, they feel like they're not going to validate themselves as much. It's more general than that. It can be more applied to, generally speaking, to a validation of deprivation as opposed to every specific circumstance. So generally speaking, validation is based on deprivation. You're not going to find a person not deprived of sex validating their inability to have sex by finding someone else that hasn't had sex and that's celibate with them or whatever it may be. Or people being victimized. They want to find someone else that's victimized. They're not going to... yeah, anyway, I'm just getting caught up in the description. But yes, you're going to find things where people more often feel victimized, or feel like they're missing out, or feel like they want to find someone to share a similar experience of their active pain. But it can be applied, did I say generally speaking? I think it could be applied more generally speaking as a whole game. Yes, that's what we're doing, generally speaking, but in specific circumstances. It's often about victimization more than anything. So yeah, we're often finding ways to avoid that victimization, or almost in a way indulging in it, because many people like indulging and their victimization. They often want to find ways to make sure they're not the only one missing out or feeling some kind of pain. But in many ways, it's not going to be a long-term solution. It's just going to be a distraction if it works at all, and if anything. So I think that's all I want to mention on this subject. Yeah. So validation, deprivation. We're looking for a similar projection in someone else when we're not necessarily in the best state of mind or body. So, yeah. I think that's all I need to say. Yeah. So, anyway, I think that's it. So, thank you, and until next time. Bye.